how to make a tea out of a tree. Now, when it comes to making a tea out of a tree, typically speaking, we're going to use one of four things. We're going to use the bark, the leaves, the root, or the fruit. Now, when you go to harvest a leaf, it's very simple. You can just simply pull a leaf off and dry it off, or you can put it in your tea just like this. For our tea today, I'm going to use some spruce leaves. So when it comes to harvesting bark, some trees will shed their bark. Take this shagbark hickory, for instance. See how the bark just comes off? Some of these trees will actually shed their bark. A birch will actually shed and drop it on the ground. Now, if you'd rather not have something that an animal may have peed on, you can harvest it from the tree safely as long as you're gentle and don't use a tool. So here's a good spot here. Let's just take this piece here. It doesn't hurt the tree. It was already off. That's enough to make some tea. Now let me show you what you do with a tree that doesn't have any bark like that. Now when it comes to a tree that doesn't have that type of bark, say like an oak, this tree here, what I would do is I would actually search the tree until I find a spot where the bark isn't attached, and then still, not using a tool, break it off with just my hand. There's some white oak bark, and I didn't damage the tree. Pretty neat, huh? Once you've got all that done, what I like to do is I like to get a clean bucket of water and a scrub brush. This is a brass scrub brush. It's not quite as abrasive, but you can use a steel one if you're gentle. Here's the hickory bark. What I like to do is, you see all this gray stuff here? I get it wet and I just give it a scrub. Get it down to where all that's gone. That's the layer of stuff that you don't really want in your tea. And you just clean it off really quick with a brush. Both sides, of course. Get it nice and clean. It's going to look completely different when you're done. See the difference? Here's how we started. Here's how it finished. Do the same for the oak bark. Just drop it in there, scrub off that outer layer. It's going to be fungus and bug stuff and, you know, all that stuff you don't really want in your tea per se. But you want to make sure to scrub all the surfaces, get it nice and clean. One of the most important parts of this. Once it's all cleaned up, it looks completely different, but it's still medicine. I don't have any roots to show you how to process today, but if you'd like to see me do a video on how to process sassafras root, I do that every year, and I'm getting ready to do it now. If you'd like to see a video on that, let me know in the comments. Real quick, let's talk about how to store these before we talk about how to use them. If you're going to store these plants for later use, keep them as whole as possible. Even after you've dried them, keep them as whole as you can. That'll keep a lot of the chemical compounds in there. If you break them up and make them into powders, a lot of that stuff will be released and you won't get as much of the benefit out of it. Alright, so when it comes to actually making your tea, we have several different options that we can use. You have a cloth tea bag that you can use to strain it with. You can get the self-sealing kind. You can use a mesh tea strainer. You can use cute little tea strainers that they have. Or if you're trying to make, say, cold tea, you can actually take some of the bigger things like this and just slap this in your water bottle. Let it sit for a while and it'll infuse into your water and you can drink it as you go. Just don't choke on the bark. Now when it comes to actually processing them, here's some sassafras that I processed earlier this year. You can cut it up like this and dry it, or you can leave the roots whole and then cut them up later to use, or you can slap them in a water bottle as well to infuse. Here is the hickory bark. I just took some garden snips and cut off that sliver, which is how you can get that in your water bottle. You store it whole like this, it'll stay better longer. Now what I did for the white oak was I cut it up with some garden shears. Just take a little bit at a time and just go. Leave it. It's not super big and you can break it up with your fingers. The bark is fairly brittle. But you cut it up like that. And what I did was I put it in my tea strainer, which is very well used, as you can tell. I'm going to have white oak tea today. And if you're processing the pine needles or any of the other needles and you want to do it like this, without it being dried, you can just take scissors and cut small pieces off. And you have tiny pieces that you would put in your tea strainer. While I'm pouring my tea, let's talk about some important stuff. You want to keep your temperature below 177 degrees. The reason why is if it's above 177 degrees, you will lose volatile and essential oils. Secondly, if you're using a leaf or something that's very soft, the soft part of the tree, you're only going to want to steep it for 3 to 5 minutes because it's very soft. It's very easy to get the compounds out of it. However, this is a bark, or if you're doing the roots like with the sassafras, you want to do a minimum of 8 to 10 minutes so you're sure to get most of the benefits out of there. Alright, so it's been 10 minutes and my white oak bark tea is ready to go. And that is how you make a tea out of a tree. Now, if you'd like to see how to process and store these herbs, maybe we'll do that with the sassafras video. Go let me know in the comments. Oh, and I almost forgot. Yes, I actually drink them too. Bon appetit.